to be done with the output in a few weeks, then it's just that. So we don't need to follow that much of a bureaucracy anyway. So
For sure.
just to make sure things are done.
Yeah,
Hi,
that's-
Kevin.
How's it going, Kevin?
Hi, Ran. Did I hear you saying we didn't want bureaucracy at Bosco?
Yes, I'm always against bureaucracy whenever we can. Come on. If anybody is here on the call that favors bureaucracy, then we have problem. Just kidding.
I'm in favor of sufficient bureaucracy, but not excessive bureaucracy, Bosco.
That's fine. I think we all do.
No bureaucracy doesn't work. Too much bureaucracy doesn't work.
That's actually,
Of course.
that's the original definition of anarchist.
Is it?
Right?
Doesn't like too much bureaucracy.
It isn't the but it's not the throwing away of it all. It's just sufficient.
Just sufficient. Right. So I've never been called an anarchist before, Neil, to my
I
knowledge.
call myself one all the time, but you get that. You could get that, yes.
Right. Hi, Alex.
Hello.
So as usual, I'm pasting the agenda for the meeting into the chat. If anyone has anything to add to it, now is the time to do so. And for Ryan and Leo's benefit, what we do is we prepare the agenda. We try to get it agreed before the meeting. Anyone from this group is welcome to add. Hi, Nicola. Anyone from this group is welcome to add agenda items.
Sounds good.
Right. So we are missing that Udai sends his apologies.
And Sebastian will be late because there's the Laos monthly currently running.
Yeah. We've been trying to get that shifted, Nicola. It would be nice to be able to join that.
Yeah, I guess it's a matter of, I mean, people very likely organize their calendar around it as well. We within the engineer team of IOG, so I don't know how practical it is, to be honest. But we can still ask Sebastian next time. I think he tried to, but there's always a conflict with something. That's unfortunate.
Yeah,
that's the world we live in. You know, just meeting after meetings.
Indeed. Welcome, Duncan. So we seem to be quorate, and I think we should get the meeting underway. So welcome to the Technical Steering Committee of November the 26th, 2025. I am taking the chair. I've posted the agenda into the chat, the provisional agenda into the chat. So the first item that you raised, Neil, was about the TSD chair. Would you like to speak to that?
It has been our practice once the new committee comes in, right, to engage in a voting process of getting a chair and a vice chair. I'm doing this because I'm not going to be standing for any of those positions, so I'm neutral in this discussion. But I thought it was reasonable to come up with it. So I think what I would just want to say is I think we should be looking. I would say we can't do that today, and it would be not sensible to have that conversation today, right? So I am proposing that we ask for people to put themselves forward for the chair and the vice chair positions in the next week, and then we basically hold that vote. once we had an opportunity, we can work somewhere where we can have a little conversation about. I mean, or maybe it has to be in 2 weeks' time, because having got that conversation, maybe what should happen is there should be a general discussion, not where people can understand what the role entails and what's happened in the past. So we don't thought the expectations would be before. Maybe we could do that. So I'm just saying we should start that process. Right.
Absolutely. So I'm very happy to discuss with anyone who's interested what the role involves. Currently, we have a chair but no vice chair. So Adam Dean was acting as vice chair. Adam has now stepped down with the latest round of votes. So one of the questions, of course, is whether we want to continue with the current structure, which is chair, vice chair, or whether we would want a co-chair approach. I know the product committee has worked with 2 co-chairs, so that would be possible to do.
I would point out, I think we should have that discussion, because actually I have observations on the role and how it operates, which I think would be reasonable to share with everybody before people make decisions and commitments. Okay, I'm happy. I'm declaring myself definitely out of this process, right? So if but I do have the experience of having worked on this committee for now almost 18 months.
So are you willing to share those out of band?
I am willing to create a discussion out of band with people. Okay.
Great. And then we'll be looking for nominations prior to this meeting next.
We don't need a formal vote, but if that's acceptable, I'm willing to. People reach out to me, and we'll find a date and time. Would that be reasonable? As opposed to them having to go publicly. I'm happy to do it either way. Okay, but do reach out if you want. If you have questions.
Yeah, so fundamentally the chairing role involves obviously chairing this meeting, the agenda for the meeting. It also involves interacting with Intersect in various ways, including attending the Intersect Steering Committee meetings, which happen once per week. So that's in essence what the role is, and it involves a certain amount of writing documents, reading and writing documents, etc.
And a certain amount of interaction.
Yes, quite a lot of interaction.
Quite a lot of interaction with other parts of the process in order for this to be an informed role. Right? Great.
So let's move on to item number 2 on the agenda. Item number 2, I was going to cover the mainnet incident. I think most people are aware of what happened, but there will be people watching this call perhaps who don't have a full understanding. So what I'd like to do in this meeting is just to quickly summarize the incident, to point out that there are detailed analyses that are available publicly, which you're very welcome to study if you're interested, and to say that there will be a process for evaluating the consequences of this incident. So, Duncan.
And which detailed analysis are you thinking of? I mean, I was having a quick look at the Intersect. There were 2 Intersect posts. I looked at the more recent, the up-to-date one, and I wouldn't say it was terribly detailed, if that's the one you mean. I couldn't figure out from that what code it was referring to exactly, and I did a bit of poking around and figured it out myself. Is there something more detailed that you were thinking of?
Yes, there's a more detailed post by Pi Lanningham. Is that correct?
Okay.
That again doesn't, as far as I know, identify the actual code that caused the issue. But there will. So these would be things I would refer people to at this point in time to get more detail. But there will be a full forensic analysis that will take place.
I mean, having had a look myself, I have some thoughts, and having been involved in, some of the code surrounding it is code I wrote, so I have some thoughts on it. I don't know what the appropriate venue to share that is.
Yeah, so there's no need to call yourself out now, and I would avoid possibly going into too much of the details in public.
Well, okay, but there's a working group which is entitled the Forensic Working Group at 4:30 this afternoon, and its first meeting, in which I assume it's going to have a hearty discussion about its terms of reference, because that's what you always have at the beginning of any type of process, right? Duncan, you'd be more. I assume you'd be more than welcome to come to that. But then they're going to start then we'll have the process of understanding.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the timing doesn't work for me today, 4:30. I'm afraid.
Right.
So let me summarise the nature of the incident, Duncan, for your benefit and the benefit of anyone listening into the call. So what happened was that on Thursday afternoon, evening UTC, someone submitted a transaction onto the preview testnet that was malformed. This took advantage of a bug in the code that allowed a malformed pool hash to be included in a transaction. So this was the nature of the bug. The team immediately investigated this, so there was an immediate response to this as soon as an issue was detected. The developer team got together and had a hot fix that was fast-tracked through the release process, and the release was available within 12 hours or less of the testnet transaction being submitted. So it's a very quick technical response to deal with the issue. Unfortunately, what happened meanwhile was that a similarly malformed transaction was submitted onto mainnet. So before the fix could be rolled out, before the upgrade could be rolled out, a similar transaction was submitted onto mainnet, and that caused a partition of the chain into a majority and a minority chain. Normally that would not have been too serious because the majority chain would have dominated. The majority chain in this case was the chain that accepted the bug, and the minority chain rejected the transaction that was the buggy transaction. However, it transpired that a significant amount of tooling had not been upgraded recently and was therefore likely to be affected by this bug. So a decision was taken to follow the minority chain, the one that didn't accept this malformed transaction, and to push the hot fix. So the hot fix also didn't accept the transaction. It was a new version of code that didn't accept the transaction, and to push stake pools to upgrade to that version. So there was then a very interesting time during which the minority chain, the quote healthy unquote chain, was catching up and attempting to overtake the quote poisoned, the unhealthy chain. And we calculated initially that we would have at least 12 hours, 2160 blocks to do this. In practice, because the poison chain slowed down in block production, and because the healthy chain speeded up in block production, we were in a situation where over 50% of stake had joined the healthy chain within something like 6 to 8 hours.
More more like 8 or 9 hours.
8 or 9 hours.
Okay.
Okay.
It was the initial bad poisoned transaction went in at 8 a.m. Somewhere between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. These are all UTC times. The 51% production occurred on the healthy chain, on the desired chain, whatever.
I'm calling it the healthy chain because that's terminology that's in public. Yeah. So very, very quickly, we've reached a state where the...
Could I just state that I think one other additional interesting point is that the healthy chain overtook the desired, or the healthy chain overtook the undesired chain, but at about 10:15 that evening, right? So it still took several hours for the chain growth for one to dominate the other, and at that point, the chain height difference was, I think, from memory, it's 846 or something.
846
blocks.
So as Neil's saying, in the evening at about it's 22:17 UTC. So when we'd achieved 51%, we were then fairly confident that the healthy chain would eventually dominate. And at 22:17 UTC approximately, the block production on the healthy chain overtook that on the poisoned chain. And at that point, all the nodes that were following the poisoned chain rolled back and very quickly rejoined the healthy chain. So there was a chain partition for approximately 14 hours before this was resolved. But all the nodes have now, to the best of my knowledge, rejoined the single healthy chain with a single chain history.
And we have no evidence that any node crashed or basically it did this all under the operation of the protocol. So the old ones jumping forward, that thing all happened. So people who slept through this didn't have to do anything to recover, is what I'm trying to say, right?
Right. So the reports from the staple operators that their pool just recovered, and the reports from people who are monitoring the system that the rollback and replay took place within 1 to 2 minutes on the nodes they were checking. So it was a surprisingly quick and surprisingly effective rejoining of the chain fork. No major disruption. As Neil's saying, nodes kept working, and throughout the incident, the network as a whole remained in communication, obviously partitioned into the two parts, but the nodes continued to operate, to exchange information, and to process transactions, maybe at a slightly degraded rate compared with normal.
But this led to the vast majority of the transactions submitted to the system ending up on the healthy chain. I think that's also to be stated. There were very few, even ones that were submitted to the unhealthy chain got onto the healthy chain.
Yeah.
The vast majority. There are some exceptions for various reasons, but the vast majority didn't worked.
So this was a major incident on the chain, one of the most serious we've ever experienced. It was very unfortunate that that the malformed transaction was submitted so quickly onto mainnet. But the response from the technical teams to recover from this was absolutely excellent. So we can be very pleased with that. And as we've said, the Security Council is now initiating a working group, a forensic working group, to analyze the data surrounding the incident. The proposal is that this should be made public, so information that comes out of that will be made public. The working group will report to the Security Council, but is formed under the guidance of this committee. So we will be providing summary reports to this committee on a regular basis. Neil, anything to add to that?
I think, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I think that there's not just as in all instances like this, there is more than just a technical aspect, right? Because there's going to be, you know, there's going to be how the hell do we get here? Were the right decisions made in real time, etc., or were appropriate processes being followed, etc. Okay, we'll have to see how that works itself out over time and where that's discussed. Duncan, go ahead.
So, I mean, beyond the, you know, the incident and proximate cause and how it was handled, all the rest of it, I mean, the bigger picture is obviously about, like, you know, what's the root cause beyond, you know, someone, you know, so and so committed a line of code that was wrong, because you don't build systems that are reliant on avoiding human error. Human error is inevitable. Is that working group intending to look at that question?
The remit for that working group has not yet been formally confirmed, right? To be absolutely honest, I think there will be a nice bun fight at 4:30 this afternoon UTC. Because
would it be sensible for us to give some guidance? Should we suggest that they do include that or not? I mean, I have opinions already on, like, you know, missing coverage. What would be appropriate coverage that should have caught this? You know, that kind of thing.
There's a charter that's just been added to this. I mean, there was a very thin charter put up yesterday. If you don't mind me saying it was thin, Bosco, right? To which I commented and put some stuff in. That's one way of getting your input, given that you can't actually get delivered. You can't be there at 4:30. Would be one way. But
pass it on to, so Neil, me, and Ryan will all be attending the meeting 4:30. Duncan, so
okay,
please.
Well, so I would suggest at some point somebody needs to look at the question of, you know, the root cause, which is probably something in the lines of, you know, code coverage testing.
I've already,
and perhaps the sensible thing is to make that part of the remit of this working group.
Well, I think this is something that we're going to have to discuss, because I think how do I put this? Because of other things going on and people threatening legal action, the requirements on this process might be a lot more stringent than you might think of a small code review. Right?
Oh dear.
Right. Okay. Right. So yes. So the point here is the decision is going to have to be made whether this is to what standard this review is going to be taken, right? And if it's going to be taken to the sort of standard which could act as input to some judicial process, all issues of, well, you know, and in any case, issues of independence of membership, there's a whole bunch of natural justice questions that would have to be put into the beginning of the process. So that's probably going to be part of the. Am I making sense? This has not yet been even aired properly, let alone decided. Okay.
Right, but I'm not trying to go like a retrospective of, you know, who did what. I'm just meaning, like, given where we are, what is an obvious thing that we ought to be looking at?
Oh yeah, I think the technical one, that's pretty quick, right? But you know, there are some deeper issues and deeper concerns that have already been expressed to me, which have a more wide-ranging questions, not just technical ones.
So if I could answer your question, Duncan, we know the line of code that caused the problem. Yeah. Okay. We can almost certainly track down who did or did not write the relevant lines of code.
Yes. I mean, I know who wrote the code, I know who reviewed the PR, but I don't think that's the important point. Because we don't build systems that are, you know, reliant on, you know, one or two people always getting it right.
So I shared with the TSC a request from Jeff, which I think is pertinent. So what Jeff is asking for is help. He's asking for help or guidance from the TSC in determining improvements here, and he gave a list which I passed on to the TSC, and I passed on also comments that Nick Clark had made and comments that I'd made about further things to do. Now, I think you're quite right to say there's something has obviously been missed. There was clearly a missing test, because if the test had existed, then the bug would not have got through, right? We can also say there was some missing defensive programming going on based on the code analysis. Okay, so testing is not good enough, right? I would not rely on testing to catch bugs. Testing might catch bugs, but it might not. So you shouldn't be relying on that. And what's happened in this case seems to be that the particular bug would have been masked by the usual execution paths in the system logic, in the transaction submission logic. The way this was manifested was by someone crafting some kind of transaction submission tool that did not use the standard front end CLI or other tooling that's provided. Okay, so if you're just looking at doing system level testing, and you're looking at system level testing on the tooling we normally use, you wouldn't even have spotted this bug, I believe.
Well, the thing that I was thinking of, and I think actually it's something that I think I was just reading, Nicholas pointed to Pi's postmortem, and Pi had a suggestion and a link to what Sebastian suggested. So, multiple people saying the same thing here, which is that the first thing that springs to mind when I look at this and say, what would be the general testing coverage that would catch this class of bug? And it would be something based on looking at it would be a binary format fuzzing testing based on the CGDL. You start from the specification of the format, and you take a systematic approach in the way that we do with quick check and whatnot. So it's not like, yes, you could have caught this specific thing with a specific test, or a quick check test that was missing from the base Cardano crypto classes library. But the more general class of thing would be something that just starts from the CGDL spec and does broad systematic variation testing. Does if the CGDL says this should be 32 long, what happens if you supply something that's 31 or 33? That's the class of testing that I think we were missing here, and that would catch this and anything similar. And how does one know that that is something that one's missing? Probably the code coverage, if we were to go and look at it, would probably tell us this.
Yeah.
So yes, code coverage is not always 100%. It's not always, doesn't always tell you everything. Having 100% code coverage doesn't guarantee you anything. You never achieve 100% code coverage anyway. I know there's all these caveats, but nevertheless, I think we could have seen this from code coverage, probably. That's my hunch. And that kind of systematic testing from the binary specification, I think, would be a useful addition to the kind of systematic testing that is already done from the ledger specification, which is higher level than the binary format.
I must admit, I haven't done a completely thorough analysis, but one of the things I'd like to see investigated, right, is that because of the nature of the blockchain and the hashes, the way in which this data is handled, and keeping line versions as well as the CBOR around for transactions, so you can construct the block, etc., is different from most networking applications. Right? Most applications don't do that. Most networking type applications, most experience is you take something off the line, you turn it into the internal data structure, and you reserialize it afterwards. This end-to-end requirement for the hashes to hold is fairly unique to the blockchain world, and I think this is I think another thing that we may have to bring into our conversation as we go on.
Yeah, so to be clear, Duncan, it seemed to be that what happens, the interaction between two different things in the code. So between a library and the use of the library.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear that the library was wrong like several years ago, and then it only just recently started getting used. But a test of the kind that I was describing, or in fact, I think you just posted what Jeff had suggested, and what Jeff is suggesting sounds very, very similar. That should have then caught that, because it would be a deviation from some spec there.
Yeah, as long as you're setting things up at the basic level, you're not going through the standard transaction submission protocol. You'd need, because that did its own filtering, Duncan.
Right.
Okay, so the transaction submission logic filtered out erroneous transactions. That had to be bypassed. So you need to go down. Yeah, so you need to go down.
But again, code coverage is a very helpful thing here, because that can tell us, if there's two different places where things are being validated, then well, it means you're missing code coverage on the one that, the second one. Or it would point out a structural issue where you're validating things twice, perhaps unnecessarily.
So the question so I posted in a request from Jeff to the TSC, and the request from Jeff is this something that the TSC would want to track? So I think you can certainly provide advice.
Can I ask? It depends what is meant by the word track. Yeah.
Yes, that wasn't completely clear to me either. I think what he probably means is where the TSC can provide advice, or possibly he means tracking across the. Possibly means tracking, testing.
I mean, there's also been a little question about red teams and all the rest of it in right side, and this is what I mean by part of the wider context here, because historically the lack of such a capability inside the Cardano ecosystem was identified, right? But actually, due to the processes that were engaged on, got thrown out by various processes, so we don't have that capability inside the Cardano ecosystem. So again, this is why I'm saying it's not just enough to talk about the code. We have to talk about the whole consequences of this in a wider context. And I'm also extremely concerned, which is already conversations, is what would have happened if things like Peras was operating? Okay, we have to look at the future, not at the past, right? And I think we've got to do this in a structured way so we actually make progress, right? And there is going to be, I'm sure. Look, the usual, like any form of inquiry, there's a lot of people trying to cover to avoid blame. There's often people trying to avoid blame. So actually, how you structure this and how you do this and how it's seen to be independent in various ways will be a very important part of the process.
Okay, so I propose if you want a more detailed discussion, we can have that later. We focus on the rest of the agenda. I would like to ask though, do you think we should respond to Jeff's request? Do you want me to put together a document where we can comment, or
could I just request that we ask what he means by track?
Okay, I will.
That's because dealing with any more detail until we know the intention. But
if it means being informed and consulted, I think then probably the answer would be yes, from my point of view.
Oh yes, we want to be informed, consulted. We want to understand highlights. We should be someone that people can raise concerns to. Absolutely, right. If he wants us to look at the metrics and sign off on the metrics of everything, it's a different question.
Great. So I'll take that up with Jeff. I'll ask him exactly what he means. But my feeling is he needs some additional technical advice and support, and he's asking for it from this group. Great. Should we move on to remaining items? So Hard Fork Working Group, Bosco, would you like to tell us about what's going on there?
Of course, not much. The first meeting of our series is going to happen on 2nd December, which is Tuesday, right? Tuesday next week. And it's intended to have at least another one before the Christmas season, so to say. There is a proposal that is being drafted or suggested. It's not set in stone. We all know. I suppose we all know what's in it. The changes for the Plutus and the Ledger, but nothing that mandates that requires a full hard fork. So it's just the intra-era hard fork. And beyond that, we are going to establish the working group. It's established. We are going to discuss the real impact of it. We're going to have, I suppose, people from IOE, Ziyang and Alexei, giving us a walkthrough, all of us who will be there, giving us a walkthrough through the changes so we can understand the impact. Then as usual, rolling agenda will be to make sure that the comms are distributed properly, so we make sure that all the relevant parties are informed about it. The unique aspect of this whole thing is that this is the first hard fork in kind of full governance reality. And it's pretty much going to follow the same process but I think we need to be careful about the mandate. So like in a way that it's just a proposal and we need to be mindful of that fact. Beyond that, I will share as the hard fork working group meeting is open for registration anyway. I'm sharing the link so you can pass it to anybody else who didn't see it already. And they can use to register. So it's not, yes, we can invite manually, but it's easier this way to register and be and attend. Also, there was a just give me a sec to find that thing. Where is it? Just to find it on the Intersect website, to find the first blog post about it, as we have more details. So, do you think, Kevin, we should share here the proposal itself as a document?
Yes, there's nothing secret about it, Oscar.
Okay, just asking.
The more widely this gets disseminated, the better.
Okay, agreed. Just a second. Just trying to protocol version 11. Okay, intra-era hard fork. I'm sharing in the chat. Also, share with the people. Okay, it's not up to me. I'm sharing. Okay, shared.
Yeah. So the summary of the scope, I think we've covered this in previous meetings.
Yes, I think so.
There will be a number of new Plutus primitives introduced, including multiscalar multiplication, which will help reduce the complexity of certain cryptographic operations. So this is likely to be beneficial for ZK proofs, for example. There are also a number of ledger bug fixes that are being introduced. So they're documented in that scope that Bosco has shared with you.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to comment on that, or I don't know, if you want to join, you have the link for registration. If you want to find out anything ahead of time, let me know if I can help or Kevin or else. So
one of the most important things is to get community buy-in, Bosco, on the scope. So one of the concerns, of course, is with people who've been doing development over the last few months. There's been some community input into that, but we want to be sure that we're meeting the community needs. The reality is there's going to be a substantial period of time between this hard fork and the following one. With the best will in the world, the least amount of time will be something like 6 months, and it's likely to be longer than that, given the prospective scope for the Dijkstra, or sorry, I should say Dijkstra era. I
was having a trouble to pronounce it, but yeah, I don't know about the mathematician that you're speaking about. How to pronounce
the text. Yeah. So one of the things, Alex, to bear in mind is there will need to be a new Plutus cost model. So this will need to be brought to the parameter committee. I've advised Xiang about that. They may or may not be ready before the next meeting of the parameter committee.
Neil.
Yeah, sorry, I did jump in about the Plutus cost model, right? Can I just say, given what's happened in past Plutus cost models and how they have been sprung on us, I would like to say, right? And given what's just happened in the last week, we're going to need a lot more evidence for the Plutus cost model going forward. Right?
Okay.
I'm just saying that was we're now allowed to talk about processes that are not satisfactory for the long term, right? This is what I'm trying to do here. Then that one, I know who did all the checking. It was me, and it was I did the second check over this stuff. And remember all the bugs I found? They weren't big ones, but why is this number bigger than this number, smaller than that one over there? And all that, yeah, I just don't want to be in that position of having to do that in 48 hours before it gets voted on. Okay. It needs to be better done in the future, and we need a regression, a proper regression path, because currently it being a laptop in somebody's drawer is not an acceptable regression. But
it's taken fully on board. We'll pass that on. So my understanding is that it's no longer a laptop; it's a particular machine. But the team was experiencing some accessibility issues with it when at the UPLC conference in Edinburgh a few weeks ago. So I had a discussion with the team at that point. My understanding from the discussion with Xiang yesterday is that the team doesn't yet have the benchmarks completed, Neil. So there's definitely potentially a bit of a race going on here.
All I'm saying here is process. I mean, I'm not again. As I introduced at the very beginning of this, I am fundamentally someone who hates regulation, and I really would love to be able to call myself an anarchist. But these are important rules, right? They are important responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is one of the things which is on the critical path. We need the parameter committee to make the recommendation. I mean, there are quite a lot of steps that have to be gone through. This needs to be deployed on test nets. The community needs to be given the time to check, to do the upgrades. The Constitution Committee needs to be, we need to write a full hard fork governance proposal. The CC needs to be able to review it. There's quite a lot of process that has to be gone through, and the evaluation by the parameter committee is an important part of that. Great. Well, welcome, Sebastian, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry for being late, but I announced it.
Understood. Are there any other questions about the hard fork working group? So from a development perspective, it looks like 10.7 might become the candidate node for the hard fork. So what's being projected is that 10.7 might include all of the updates, all of the Plutus updates, all of the ledger updates, and so be in a position that could take us to protocol version 11. But we don't yet completely know that. Things could still happen. And time wise, I would say it's possible that 10.7 is released within the next 2 to 3 weeks, but we're getting very close to the year end, and things slow down when we get to that point.
Yeah, I agree. From what I read from Jess, right? She told early December or something like that. But yeah, it's close to mid-December already anyway. So I don't have high hopes. Just operationally speaking.
Yeah, so early December seems unlikely, Bosco. I know work is going on with protocol with Node version 10.7 in parallel with Node version 10.6. So as I posted to the TSC channel, Node version 10.6 is work on that's progressing well. There are a couple of fixes that will have to be done. There's a bit of investigation to be done over a memory leak before we could make it a production version, but it looks like that's getting close to release. So I would say the next few days or a week likely for Node version 10.6, but then you've got to get 10.7 through the same cycle, and there will need to be a week or two of testing before it could be a production version. So we might get it before the break into some preview, pre-production form, but it seems unlikely there would be a production version of the node at this point in time.
Personally, I think the same, but I'm always motivated for the future to like give me something good. I don't know.
But it'll be good, but it needs to be right, Bosco.
I'm always for good surprises. We had enough bad ones, but I'm just picking. So yeah, I agree with you.
And the team, as Duncan was pointing out, is going to be very, very focused on the retrospective, and they're going to be doubly concerned, I would think, about any bugs in these node releases.
Yeah, so like this was the plan for hard fork and the working group and the hard fork, but in the meantime, this incident with double hash happened, and everything was kind of impacted. So not only the development as well. Okay.
Yeah, I think the development probably hasn't been impacted too much, Bosco. It will have had a few days impact, perhaps, but the wash up and thinking carefully about the impact is going to take longer, and that we may have to do things there.
I agree.
And we certainly want to be cautious.
Yeah. Agreed.
Great. Okay. Yeah, and benchmarking of the new primitives will also need to be carried out now. So the benchmarking team is aware of that. They will be carrying out the benchmarking of the new primitives.
So the benchmarking team is now carrying out the primitives. It used to be the team.
Performance and tracing team.
They're going to do the primitives, not the. Because there's the cost model primitives, and then effectively the benchmarking performance team is really about making sure regressions haven't occurred at systemic level. So I mean they're not taking on
No, they're not taking on the benchmarking of the primitives. They're taking on the system level benchmarking. Yeah. Right. What we're concerned is to ensure the new crypto primitives have measured real world cost, as that we validate that against the system, as we've done in the past.
What has happened in the past is that there are certain primitives and scripts. This benchmarking does not give evidence that the new primitives actually will operate correctly on the chain, and in performance cases, what it does give evidence to is that those tests haven't regressed. So let's be careful what you're claiming, what we think we're getting out of this process. Okay.
Let's raise that at the parameter committee meeting. That's the correct place to raise that. Yeah. and to make sure the benchmarks are provides the information we need to make sensible decisions. But that will need, so the benchmarking will need to be carried out, and there was also a question about auditing the Plutus primitives. I believe we covered that in previous meetings. Great. Next item I had was to follow on from the item we discussed last week. We had Michaela Nudzi from the community present a set of questions about nested transactions. Now, he has provided us with a summary of those questions, which I've passed on to this group. There's been a bit of background discussion on that. What we now need to agree is how to proceed with those questions. Neil.
I think basically, the key question here is, some people have said, should we double guess the working groups and the conversations, right? Which is reasonable. If we are going to take this sort of thing on, I think we need, again, the anarchist me is saying, what's the minimum procedures we need for this? Because if we don't have any procedural for it, we will end up discussing this and spending lots of time with lots of people, which is not an appropriate forum, right? So if we are, I think the first question is, I think that what we need to do here is decide what's the best what's the tactical action in this case. Should we then, given we've done that tactical action of, say, forming a subcommittee or something and a time and something, I have no idea what to do with the tactical action, then we should revisit that as a strategic action, which we write down in our procedures.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is to agree that tactical action is needed.
That's right. Right. So, my analysis, here we go. My viewpoint on this process, having talked to him and having read what's now been, listened to the presentation from last time and looking at this one, right, is that the list of points is probably not in the correct order. Some of those points are not actually relevant to the TSC, right? They're about product fit, they're about people's feelings, and in the nicest possible way, we're not worried about individual people's feelings in this process. The other point I would make is that the fourth point in his bullet list, which is about it's not needed, is the first one I think that has to be resolved. Okay, because if it's not needed and it demonstrably doesn't add any value to anything, then why is it being done? Is what I would ask. So he has to prove and I think the burden of proof is to show. The burden of proof is perhaps too strong. But the burden is for him to show why it is not needed, because my first reading of it is the original need for nested transactions is to produce a form of atomic thing so that multiple things can be done at the same time and can't be split. An atomic action occurs, and there's nothing in the conversation that he's putting there that says that he hasn't shown that the need for that atomic action is not necessary. Right, so I think that's the first problem I have.
But I think, Neil, that's because, I mean, he's assuming that everybody understands that you can merge transactions. So there's he says, okay, there's no new stuff, and you say, well, it's atomic, and well, okay, you can already create atomic things. The point, I think, really the crucial point is about how easy is it to build these atomic transactions when there are multiple parties involved, and that's the key thing that nested transactions give you. And I think it's illustrated best by the original use case, which is the Babel fees.
Yes,
it means that I can sign a transaction, spending money using, Decoots coins. It's my standard example. And I fire them off into the ether. And I hope that somebody else in the market, will fill the order for Decoots coins and pay the fee on my transaction. I have not had to coordinate with that person that actually, did the conversion or did, combine them things together. And you could build a system in which I have to interact, with the market, and I find someone who will co-sign my transaction, and we both build it together, and we both sign the same body. And so it is possible, but it involves, it clearly does involve a different pattern of interaction. And I
Yes.
think it's quite straightforward to argue that it's a more involved and difficult pattern of interaction
and requires
than what the Babel fees design goal is, and what the nested transactions allows.
Yeah, I did find some issues of consistency between centralization, decentralization, etc. So this is what we have at the moment is a very decentralized approach. Yes, other ones would require off-chain coordination to achieve.
I'm not even sure if I'd put it in terms of centralization, decentralization. It's just a more involved communication pattern between off-chain communication pattern between parties. If you want to be able to do the things that you can do. So to couch it in terms of what's the communication pattern involved between parties building the transactions, that's the thing that changes. It's not really about atomicity.
Okay, I accept, I totally accept, but I saw that as the first important point to resolve. Right? Because then
that's reasonable, yeah.
Yeah, and the second thing is the point that he's made first, which is MEV exposure, right? I know, because Duncan and myself have had some background chats about this. MEV is important, this maximum extractable value concept, but I think that then there has to be we have to come up with. Take over, Duncan. I think I know what you're going to say. Off you go.
Well, actually, I just wanted to make sure I understood the point about MEV. Correct me if I'm wrong. The point about the claim about MEV is that if you have nested transactions, it means that now somebody can reach inside those nested transactions and pull out the pieces and reassemble them, how they would in a different way, because they are now modular, and then you can rebundle them. Like, if I fire off my Decoots coin only transaction that doesn't pay any fees in ADA, and somebody else fills that, and then a third person sees the transaction that had been bundled together, takes it apart again and rebundles it in a different way, that's the thing that is now possible, I presume. And is that the basis of the MEV exposure? Is that what the claim is?
But I mean, that doesn't sound very different from watching multiple mempool and doing it in a different way.
Yeah, the MEV is inevitable.
Well,
maybe.
So there's a wider discussion. What I'm trying to say is there's a wider discussion about MEV and how Cardano relates to it, which I think we need to have. But I'm just saying, what I'm trying to say is we've already spent, we spent a long time last time. I don't want to spend too much time this time, but I'm saying if we are going to tactically do it, I think those are the two questions we address. And then say we're only going to consider the other questions if we see those as gating. We don't take on the whole list, is what I'm trying to say. We just take on what we consider to be, even if we're going to go tactical, we do the gating ones.
I can just voice what I put on the chat. Do we want to discuss nested transactions or MEV now? Because we definitely have no time for that.
I wanted to do. Sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe what can a TSC possibly do? We see an escalation from one of the working groups. Then we should, what are the possible action paths? Say.
So let me propose some different possible actions, Sebastian. So one is we could say no action. That would be possible. We've spoken to Michaela. We've listened. We've discussed what he's said, and we don't feel that the TSC should or needs to take further action. That the issues are resolving themselves. Second possible course of action could be to respond directly to Michaela with a summary of the points and say, as Neil is basically proposing, Neil and Ryan are proposing that there are 2 points that we would focus on. These are the 2 points, and this is our response, and then to close it off like that. Third action would be to have a discussion with members of the working group, specifically the chair of the working group, Alexei Kolesevich, and Michaela, and to attempt to resolve the issues via discussion, and then to summarize that and close it off. So these are different actions. They could be even stronger actions.
And so it's basically no action, consult, or mediate. But
Essentially,
so all the three things you just mentioned. Was also so that the TSC cannot say no, this is not a good change technically. Only if there's a technical problem to it. But we kind of say, okay, we can look for where there is technical problems with it, but whether it is worthwhile to do or not, whether it is valuable, like there is some value add, which maybe sets off the added complexity, is not exactly in our merit, right? It's more about, is it good to have for Cardano in terms of product?
No. I would say actually what I would say is the following, right? He's just reading it. The general assertion is that this work is not needed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's the assertion, and I think that's basically. And if we were to agree with him, we could. If we were to go down the path and say we agree with you, this work isn't needed, right? Then that would be our technical conclusion. From a technical perspective, this is not needed. Okay, so this is what I was trying to point out. He's almost asking us, implicitly appears to be asking us to go down that route.
yeah. And Sebastian, I think if we were to uncover some major technical concern, then it's quite right to have an opinion on that and to have that reflected to the technical working group.
If it is a clear-cut case like this, right, that would be ideal. But maybe it is, yeah, okay, technically you could do it differently, but it's maybe just not desirable from a user or developer experience standpoint. So then maybe it's not as a clear-cut case. Could that be?
I would then suggest that we couch our response in, these are how we see the trade-offs being made, where other people may make the value judgments of the various values of those trade-offs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is the way I always we'd act as a consultancy role, not as a decision-making role in that one. Okay, because that's the way I see her playing this. Right? I mean, this is not a we don't. So I'm just that. So, but I think the point is we could just say. I mean, the other part of this process is we have to be seen to taking. There's obviously a dispute. There's obviously not a meeting of minds here, right? So we actually have a technical thing here. Do we act as mediators, or do we act as decision makers? Do we act as we could be the Supreme Court, just not take it on, right? Or do we try and mediate, or do we mediate? I think that's the key question here. Do we try and find a resolution, or do we try and find people understand each other? Right, because I think reading it, they're doing this. Right, they're talking past each other.
Has this also been escalated to a product committee body? Like whether it's worthwhile to do transactions or bubble fees as a product idea in general?
If product committee wants to take it on, more than willing for them to do it. My guess is they're going to punt back to us because they're going to take a look at the question.
Yeah.
And say, we don't have the expertise to even understand.
It may be that we need to give some advice, as Neil says, on the trade-offs, and then the product committee have a look at it. Because I also look at this question, and it also looks like a product question to me. It's it has these costs, it has this benefit, it benefits these use cases, and doesn't benefit those, and it adds, permanent complexity to the ledger. There are a bunch of these trade-offs, and then the question is it worth it? Which ultimately is not within our remit, but I think probably the product committee would probably benefit from some of our advice on what that trade-off looks like.
Yeah. So I know that Sam is aware of this issue. So Sam actually introduced me to
I am wondering. I mean, again, you see, you know, given all the shenanigans that we've had about remits and all the rest of it, maybe what we should be asking you is we say, look, I know we know this is couched in huge technical terms, but actually we see this as a product problem. If the product people want us we can give advice to the product committee on how to do it. And if the product committee asks us, we will consider helping them. But basically, we don't see this as a technical appeal because actually I think that it's not strict technical merits, is it? Right?
And there is nothing like a strict technical flaw in how it's pursued right now, right? So I think this is our current understanding is it is done as a SIP, it is done with the proper people involved, it's not recklessly done, right? Of course, we acknowledge there is a significant maybe complexity increase to the ledger, right? If it is not really warranted for, is of course ideal, right? But
I must admit, I deem that to be out of almost, you know, that's an implementer. If the implementer's having real technical difficulty, and it turns out that the whole cost model has changed, then they should be coming back to us with, you know, hey guys, it's not working properly. How can we have some help? I saw a product committee, but when I really think about this one is, I saw this thing as it should be stopped. Right? That's what he's asking for. That this strange range of work, it would be stopped because none of it is couched in terms of suggested technical change.
Yes, and especially I think as I just peeked at the conversation a bit, which is happening in the open, which is very commendable, I would say. It went into this, yeah, but I can't stop this because I'm paid to work on this, right? There's these opinions floating around, which is then again really, oh yeah, Intersect is my client, so they should be made aware to whichever body decides on this statement of works, right? So we couldn't even advise, say, stopping or whatever if there is that thing.
To be technically clear, right? I don't think even Intersect is the client here, right? Because the way
as a proxy only,
yeah, no. So there is no client, right, at this point. The client is the DAO authors, right?
The network.
Yeah, right. So yes, do not go down that route. The DAO and the legal obligations. I have read the reports. So I'm just saying that's what we got to. And I'm not trying to play pass the parcel here, but I do think this is really we're looking through this. The technical issues are really ones of product choice.
Yeah, so when it was initially presented, I thought there might be a technical issue to do with extracting value from the transaction. So being able to extract value from the nested transaction. I think we've cleared that off.
Well, I think that this is the most minor version of it, given all the other and all the risks that exist in other protocols. Would be my view, right? And that's
we were stating that. Yeah.
Okay, so it's worth stating that this is one of there are other bigger MEV extraction problems than this in Cardano, potentially in Cardano and proposed Cardano protocols.
Okay, so I think we've probably discussed this in our first session. Yeah. So I'd like to draw us to a set of actions.
So we write up a suitable paragraph of conclusions, and we punt it. We say we don't see this as a technical problem, right? And basically, we say the product, if the product could be, this seems to be more about a product committee and a product committee choice, where we're willing to support. We would suggest that the product committee focus on item 4 and item 1, and not the rest, because item 4 and item 1 are the gating items of this problem. If they want advice, we can give them some. If you want discussion, we can give them some discussion.
So who's willing to help write that paragraph?
I'm hoping that the Magic AI tools will do that.
Well, somebody has to take the lead and make sure the AI writes the...
Ask our secretary to try and get the Magic AI tools to make that paragraph for us. If not, at least to produce an initial paragraph that can be... Right? I just want... because
you were cutting off, did you say Sebastian?
Oh, if someone wants to take it on, it's fine.
No, I'm not volunteering for this time. I did last week.
It should come out of the AI tools, right? And then we can make it. Then we can stop it hallucinating, right? It will hallucinate something which you can fix. Right?
Okay, so Bosco, can you run the Magic AI tool to give us some initial text and then pass that on to the group to
I
say,
am willing to respond to an initial text. As you know, Kevin, my big problem is creating text ex nihilo. Put something in front of me, and I say, "Oh, that's wrong," and start correcting it.
right? So we have a process, and we can pass. Well, we then want to pass this on to the product committee. And we can refer Michaela to the conclusion that we reach. Yes. Great. So we've got a resolution to this from a TSC perspective. Right.
Kevin, how you would articulate the ask? I'm not asking for a prompt. I'm just asking for what I need to produce. How you would summarize it?
Yeah. So what we're asking for is a summary response to the 4 points. Is it 4 points?
It's multiple points, 6 points, right?
6 points.
But actually, which we
These-
consider
the-
just 4 and 1 as the initial crucial questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've now ceased to record.
Two, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, we still record. Okay,
Still quorum, but we should consider drawing to a conclusion. But I would quickly like to raise a couple of points. So one is that the 2026 budget process is going to kick off very shortly. What will need to happen, so there are a number of deficiencies with the 25 process that we're well aware of. There was a discussion in Berlin about improvement. Now, one of the things that we want to do is to have a 2026 roadmap, and we will want technical input into the 2026 roadmap. So what we would expect is that budget submissions being made against the proposed 26 roadmap, which should be on the path to achieving the 2030 vision. So we need to look at the 2030 vision and the 2026. The 2026 roadmap should then be a set of objectives that will propel us towards that longer term vision. The product committee is going to submit the 2030 vision on chain very shortly. So now is the time to provide input to that, and there's still some things missing from that. We provided a bit of feedback from the TSC, but for various reasons we haven't gone into any detail. So this is a chance to provide technical input into the 2030 vision. But then, as I said, what we will need to do is we'll need to work, I think, with the product committee to put forward a sensible 2026 roadmap. There is an identified gap coming from DREPs relating to evaluation of proposals. And clearly we can't provide detailed technical evaluation of all proposals. And clearly this group is too small to do that, even for a reasonable set of core proposals. But we should be considering the process by which technical input is provided to guide the DREPs.
There's a key question of resourcing here.
Yes. Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Right, because basically, you may be able to find a bunch of experts who could do the resourcing and all the rest of it, but actually, there's going to need to be money.
Yeah,
and it needs to be it can't be part of the 26 budget because actually it's got to happen beforehand, right? Yes.
Correct. It's a relatively small amount of money compared with the sums that are being touted about. It's essentially paying people to do the reviews, to collate the reviews, Neil. So there's definitely effort involved. There is some cost involved, but if you look at the millions of dollars that are being spent, it's a very small amount that's required. Now, of course, so you're bringing me on to the next point, which is TSC operational budget. So we have no operational budget at this point. We could put together a covering operational budget proposal based on activities like this, like attendance at events such as the Cardano Summit, so supporting essential activities. And we do have some idea about what those would be. So I'd be very happy to progress that. Before the current fall in the ADA value, I was thinking that was going to be relatively straightforward. But I'm aware that everyone is perhaps feeling cash strapped at this point in time. So maybe it's a bit of a harder ask than before. We would need to get this ratified by the board, but I spoke to a couple of board members in Berlin about this, and they were supportive. So we don't have to take a decision now, but with your support, what I would propose to do would be to start to kick off that process, and we can take that out of band. Does anyone object to that? Does anyone think that's a bad thing to do?
I'm just saying that we could use models of existing processes like authorities and things like that, and efforts that put into doing this to scale, to get an appropriate scale for this activity in terms of human beings, at least.
Yeah, and there is an implication to this, Neil. So it's not just money; it's also time.
Mm-hmm.
These things have to be done quickly enough and soon enough.
They have and as you say, it is not a background activity. It's on-demand, foreground activity that has to occur at a high rate, and basically has to be sized for a particular likelihood of things arriving, right? So,
right.
And I mean, I think we should turn to Intersect and ask what is the rate, how many proposals would they? It's not for us to judge how many proposals. Right, they have to come up with some numbers for that as well.
We could use last year's submissions as a first pass on that. Yeah, so we do have some evidence, and what I would say is, well, the main thing would be to set up the process, and we would need to restrict the scope. I don't think it might not be possible to review all proposals, but we should be looking at core ones.
Yeah, so I mean, triage, throw out the things that aren't core, that don't sit inside, because we keep on cutting our. We never wanted to do anything. A lot of these things, get down to core, and then decide whether they are, and spend more time on the big value ones. Yes.
Yeah, and there were some discussions about those big value ones as well, because the big value ones, all or nothing, it's very hard to judge.
And I think we should be looking to get a lot more small. I mean, the big value ones are going to cause us troubles, right? The problem with the big value ones, right, is that if things go wrong, they haven't fulfilled all of the deliverables, and currently it's unclear what would happen in those circumstances. So they need to be it was not a manageable process last year, and I don't think I still think a lot of the court cases are yet to come. So let's put it that way. I think it will be almost inevitable in this process.
Okay. So conscious of the time, we've gone over time quite a bit. Let's get that kicked off. As I said, in the background, I can make a first stab about share information with people, and we can aim to progress that over the next few weeks or months. we don't have a lot of time if we're going to do that.
Okay. Shall we
Great.
wrap up?
Right, so call this meeting to a close. I'm assuming there's no other business, no other items of business that anyone wants to raise. So thank you very, very much, everyone, and I'll see you on the other side, as they say.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everyone.